Hey, what's good, guys? Welcome back to each and every one of you. Something that's incredibly indicative of specifically communist countries, especially throughout history, is the appearances that they keep. Oftentimes, these appearances are the very thing that ends up destroying them because they constantly have to spend more and do more than what they can actually afford to do, or because they're desperate to cling to some kind of outward appearance of opulence or success. Very indicative of this would have been Soviet Union, East Germany, where they spent an obscene amount of money on East Germany, the Soviets did, in order to make it seem like life in the Soviet Union was absolutely beautiful and perfect. This, in spite of the fact that houses close to the wall in East Berlin had to be boarded up, their windows and doors all boarded up. People weren't allowed to live there. And the reason, of course, for it is they would have been able to see over the wall and see that their cousins on the west side of Germany is living a much, much, much nicer life. But it's about the appearances, oftentimes more so than the actual functionality of things. And South Africa is genuinely no different. Take a look at Eskom. Last week, we found out, or we heard from Eskom singing their own praises, that they had been profitable for the first time in a long time. They had made almost 50 billion rand in profits, or I think it's 30 billion actually. Sorry, I think it's 38 billion rand that they made in profits, and this was touted as a massive success considering that Eskom hasn't been profitable for a really long time. And that sounds good until you realize that they were only profitable because of the almost 60 billion rand that taxpayers gave them earlier this year. And if you remove the bail that the taxpayers gave Eskom, Eskom would have been still in a deficit of about 40 billion or 30 to 40 billion, thereabouts. So clearly, Eskom isn't profitable. And not only is Eskom not profitable, but according to Moody's, the rating agency, looking over the books of Eskom, they don't believe that Eskom is going to be financially stable even in 2028, which is what Eskom is currently touting to the world as the year that they will finally be independent, no longer reliant on government handouts, and it will all be fine and dandy. The reason for this, well, amongst others, is the incredibly bad debt collection that happens at Eskom. Pretty much every or most municipalities in South Africa owes billions to Eskom, and Eskom is not collecting on those debts. Of course, Eskom promised with the most recent bailouts that there's going to be massive reform and they're going to fix this. They're going to make sure that people can and should pay their bills. And this was all going to be part of this comprehensive package that they had to make. They had to make some promises in order to get taxpayer money because the ANC has to keep up appearances. The other problem, of course, is the fact that their expenditure, specifically salaries, which is the single largest item on Eskom's payroll or on Eskom's sort of balance sheet, is just paying salaries. And that's also astronomically high, not to mention all of the tender overruns and stuff of that nature. So Eskom isn't making money at all. It hasn't made money for a really long time, and it isn't making money now. In fact, according to Moody's, they'd be very surprised if Eskom doesn't go to the government next year again begging for money. Now, why would municipalities pay Eskom for anything? This, of course, is a really good question. Eskom isn't allowed to switch off the electricity to an entire city. Eskom isn't allowed to switch off the electricity to an entire province because our government made electricity a human right. This in spite of the fact that it isn't a human right. You see, very few things are human rights. The only rights that you have as a human are those that don't infringe upon anyone else having to provide said right to you. So you kind of have the right to breathe. That's about it. And if you can get your own water, you have rights to water. If you can hunt your own food and you don't take food from someone else, then sure, you may have right to food as well. Everything else, whenever someone else is involved in having to provide said service to you, it is not a right. It is a privilege. In spite of the fact that you might think, well, people need electricity in order to survive. just because one needs something in order to survive does not make it a right. The best way to test this is what would happen if someone came to you tomorrow and said, actually, no, you're not going to have electricity, and they just switched off your lights? Would you be able to stop them? Would you be able to keep the lights on? If the answer to those are no, then you don't have a right to electricity. You have a privilege to it. But of course, the ANC doesn't think that way. They declare everything a right. Passing high school or passing school is a right. Education is a right. Food is a right. Electricity is a right. Housing is a right. Of course, these are not rights. These are privileges that everyone else has to pay for. And that's exactly where we are with Eskom. The privilege that so many South Africans enjoy for free in order to switch on their lights and waste electricity is something that is paid for by taxpayers. The problem? There isn't enough taxpayers to pay for all of this. And Eskom sits in another big problem. Most of those who can pay are starting to move to solar. They're starting to move to, well, I don't think commercial wind or residential wind technology is really at the level yet. I know there's a lot of technologies out there for wind, but I don't think it's at the level yet, at least here in South Africa, unless you live in a place where you're very lucky and the wind isn't dirty at all. But solar is definitely something that a lot of South Africans are switching to residentially, and that makes it even more impossible for Eskom to really make back any of their money. Not to mention the fact that our economy is shrinking. Most of the big energy users in South Africa are closing down. They're moving shop. They're setting up in other countries or kind of decentralizing, moving their business all over because of how expensive electricity is in the country. We just had Fikile Mbalula, Gwede Mantashe, excuse me, not Fikile Mbalula. I think it was Gwede Mantashe, who spoke at the mining indaba, making a whole bunch of jokes, but of course not respecting the fact that South Africa is struggling. Our mining sector is continuously collapsing. There really isn't any growth forthcoming, and yet we're just doing more of the same. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, the lights are probably not going to stay on for long. Eskom is probably going to continue to siphon money out of the government, siphon money away from taxpayers. The promised reduction in electricity prices, I promise you, is not coming because Eskom doesn't have the money for it. If they're going to lower the price on electricity, it's only going to be for a short period of time before they have to collect that in taxes again, because Eskom isn't making money, because the government isn't doing its job, because the economy isn't growing, because, well, people are moving away from Eskom because it's too bloody expensive. All of this is a death spiral. Here's the thing. South Africa is currently stuck in a death spiral. Every element of this government, every element of this economy is going the way of the dodo bird. And there is nothing that the ANC can do about it because, well, they're the ones who put the wheel in motion. Anyways, as always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you make of this? Is this something you called? Is this something? Do you think that maybe I'm missing something? Maybe there is a turnaround strategy somewhere in all of this. I'd love to read your thoughts. As always, massive shout out and a thank you to all of the patrons, as well as the YouTube channel members. If you want to become a patron or a channel member, just hit the links in the description down below or join button right below this video. Any and all support is always very much appreciated. Be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.